For 25 years, my life was about playing the piano. And this story is about how I came to realize that my life was going to be about something else. So it's the summer of 1978, actually early fall. I had just turned 16 in the summer. And in September, I went to college. And I went to Juilliard, the Juilliard School. I was one of the youngest people to ever be admitted. And I was extraordinarily proud, and so was my family, and this was a big achievement. So it was 3 or 4 weeks into the school year, and I was on my way to the first studio class of the year. And a studio class is when all of the students that study with the same teacher come together, play for each other, give feedback, and it's a teaching tool. It can be extremely stressful, obviously, because you're competing with these other young pianists. There's not a lot of opportunities and a lot of talent in the room. But I wasn't nervous. It was all good. I wasn't playing that day, so it was just a delight to be in the company of this extraordinary cohort. So I come in. The teacher is there, Mr. Joseph Rafe. He's a venerable teacher. He's in his early 70s. His lineage is very extraordinary because he, as a teacher, goes right back to Beethoven. He studied with Schilotti, who studied with Liszt, who studied with Beethoven. So he has quite a big studio, maybe 20 or 22 kids. And so I come in, I take my seat, and the class starts, and Mr. Rafe says, "We have a new student who just joined the studio. Why don't you stand up and say your name?" So I stood up and I said, "My name is Limor Tomer." And someone said, "That's a pretty name. What does it mean?" And without missing a beat, Mr. Rafe said, "It means aphrodisiac." And the place fell apart. Everyone was laughing hysterically. Now, I had no idea what the word meant. I was trying to parse it. I thought maybe it had something to do with hair. I just was completely confused and mortified. Got through the class, went home, looked it up in the dictionary, and that's when I knew my life was not going to be so simple at Juilliard. I had 2 lessons a week, Tuesday morning and Friday afternoon. The Tuesday morning lessons went as you would expect, working on technique and musicality and developing my abilities as a pianist. Friday afternoon was a little bit different. I would come in and Mr. Rafe would already be quite expansive, relaxed. The scotch would be on the table and he would say, "What are you bringing today?" And I would say, Mozart Sonata, Schubert, whatever I was bringing, and he said, "All right, let's hear it." And I would start. And using the eyes in the back of my head, I would track his every movement. And eventually, he would get up from the couch, and I could hear him coming towards me. And he would come towards me, and eventually he'd be standing right over me, right at the piano bench, and then he would put his hand on me. So sometimes his hand would be on the back of my neck, and it would be there as I left my body, floated up to the acoustic tile, disassociated from my body, and continued to focus on the music, the rubato, what I was trying to say, keep track of the form of the piece, keep track of the fingering and everything that was going on in the music, while the body was down there dealing with what it was dealing with. And I got quite good at disassociating. And this would happen every Friday for 6 years. Depending on what piece I was working on, he would react, depending on where he was in his consumption of scotch or how he was feeling that day, his hands would travel down my body. If I was playing Mozart Concerto, Kerschel 488, his hand would be on my lower back, massaging my lower back. Sometimes, if I was bringing Beethoven Waldstein Sonata, maybe His hand would be on my shoulder, sort of feeling my skin as if it was fabric that he was testing. Schubert, impromptus, his hand would be on my thigh. Chopin, barcarolle, his hand would be on my breast. And to look at it from his perspective, I believe that he thought he was not really, he was just having a little bit of, taking a little bit of enjoyment, an old man having a little solace. And compared with what else was going on in the school, it was quite harmless. I mean, teachers were demanding full-on sex with their students. Both the boys and the girls were exposed to this regularly. The administration, of course, was very much aware of it, and no one did a thing. Now, in my case, I could not bring this to my mother because my mother was determined that I was going to be a pianist, and she relocated our family. We immigrated to New York so that I could pursue my studies. And her response to everything was, keep your mouth shut, keep your head down, and work harder than everybody. And that's what we did, and that's what I did. By the time I was in my early 20s, I had gotten myself to the point where I said I'd had enough. And I closed that piano lid, and I walked away. The effect of those 6 years is with me every day. When I hear the music, it brings the feelings right back to my body. It's all in my body, like an old chemical burn. You can still feel it, very much so. I'm extremely lucky that I was able to find a way to make a career and stay with music. I gravitated towards new music, music that's being written today by living composers, music that I have no baggage with. And I put this away. I closed it, I put it away, and I never talked about it to anyone until this past year, when two things happened. One thing that happened was the Me Too movement happened, and it was the first time that I heard that it wasn't my fault, that I didn't somehow bring this on myself, and that I had a right to speak up. And the second thing that happened is that I found myself in the care and custody of the most extraordinary, beautiful young musician, 15-year-old musician, my daughter Amal. And I thought, this has got to be spoken about. This has to happen, because if nothing else, she needs to know, she needs to hear this, and she needs to know what to do. And I did not have the kind of mother that would support me and protect me, but I only hope that I can be that kind of mother to my young musician. Thank you.